Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining myself and Michelle today on your Friday lunch. I hope you get some enjoyment and benefit out of this. As Michelle said there in my intro, so I'm a nutrition and health coach. What does that mean? I work one-on-one with people in relation to their nutrition and health. So holistically, we'll look at someone's complete lifestyle. So it's looking at food, it's looking at your sleep, your stress, your exercise, etc., your general lifestyle and your own personal circumstances, and come up with a plan for you. And then I do some corporate work as well in relation to things like this, lunch and learn, and corporate wellness talks, etc. So thank you for joining us today on your lunch break. So I'm going to talk you through, I suppose, top tips, as Michelle said, in relation to eating the vegan and vegetarian way. So what do we mean by that? Well, as we know, like being a vegan or vegetarian over the last number of years has become more apparent. Lots more people are going this way in relation to their own personal choice for diet. And personally, as a nutrition and health coach, I don't prescribe to any one diet. I am not vegan or vegetarian myself. I sit on the fence of all diets. I don't like the word diet. First three letters of the word diet spell die. And so I wouldn't even, when I'm working with people, use that word. It's about healthy eating and eating in a certain way, okay? And looking at the what, where, when, and why you eat, as well as the what you eat. Sorry, I've said the what already. It's the where, when, and why you eat, as well as the what you eat. Okay, so in relation to today's talk, it's going to be looking at the what you eat, vegan and vegetarian food, and what exactly that encompasses. Okay, as I said, I think to be kind of have a broad view on all of these things is really good. I don't know, people, maybe at the end I'm going to leave some room, time at the end for questions and answers, and people might want to share if they are vegan or vegetarian and questions around that. Some people on the Zoom today might not be either vegan or vegetarian like myself, but are really of the mind that they want to incorporate lots more plant-based foods into their eating ways, which is kind of what I will gear this talk towards, if that makes sense. So it's more plant-based. How can we get more of that in to us daily in relation to giving us more micro and macronutrients, okay? Okay, so I suppose just some stats. Figures are always good. Just this shows you basically from the 60s right through until 2050, 30 years away, the increase in plant-based vegan vegetarian eating. It has increased hugely, okay, particularly in places like, if you look there, China, Brazil, grown hugely, okay, and worldwide there's been a steady increase, so it's set to continue to rise, that is for certain sure. Okay, so how can we incorporate more plant-based foods into our diet? Well, different countries have different ways of doing it. In Ireland, we're still with the old food pyramid. So thankfully, about a year ago, they switched the bottom layer of our food pyramid to incorporate fruit and veg. So they're looking at like saying that we should try to get 5 fruit and vegetables portions into us daily. More, I suppose, advanced countries in relation to looking at a holistic approach to nutrition and health would be Canada. And they've incorporated a food plate as part of their model rather than a pyramid. So that's kind of what I would say to people as well. When you're looking at what you're eating, view it as you eat your food, which is in general off of a plate. Look at having half your plate full of vegetables predominantly, maybe some fruits as well. Why I say more veg is because fruits are high in sugar, veg less so, depending on which veg you eat. We'll talk about those in a second. Protein-based foods, a quarter of the plate, and then your whole grains as well, and water is your drink of choice, and then you should have a little dash of fats in there as well. I'm going to talk around that in a second as well. Obviously on this plate, this is for the whole country to view. There's some meat items on there as well, but we're going to talk around the vegan and the vegetarian protein options now in a second. This is just another example of a food plate. This is from the Harvard. So again, just to have this, I suppose, vision in your head as to what your plates should look like. So this is probably a better descriptive one, in that it goes into examples of what your healthy fats might be, your whole grains and your proteins, etc. Okay, so vegan and vegetarian eating for me, plant-based food eating for me, is color. It's all the rainbow color, okay? What I would say to you, I'm going to talk a little bit around this today, like any way of eating, if you were buying food that, you know, comes in a packet and has ingredients in it, be mindful of the ingredients, okay? Always turn the packet over, read through the ingredients. Do you recognize them? If you don't, will your gut, you know, does your body need them? So try to eat as much whole foods as you can. Okay, so in particular, in relation to vegan and vegetarians, what can you eat? Okay, so obviously if there's vegans and vegetarians on this today, you'll be fully aware that as a vegetarian, what you can include, which vegans cannot, is dairy and eggs, and honey as well as another example. So as a vegetarian, by eating dairy and eggs, you are getting more B12 vitamin into you than a vegan would be, okay? We can only get B12 from, which is really important for our red blood formation. You can only get B12 from meats, dairy, and eggs, okay? So as a vegan, you are not getting that at all into your body. So I'm going to give you some examples of how you might get that in through supplementation in a minute. The rainbow of fruit and vegetables, as I said, more veg than fruit. Why more veg than fruit? Okay, so aside from the starchy veg would be anything that's a root veg that grows in the ground. So like your potatoes, your sweet potatoes, your beetroot, your carrots, etc. Depending on how you cook them as well, they can have more sugars in them than your green leafies, let's say. As with your fruit, okay? So the fruit with the most sugars in it are bananas, grapes, and dates. Most of the dried fruit, if you think about it, the process of drying something out, it increases the sugar content. So dried fruits tend to have more sugar in them as well. So just be mindful and cautious of that. Why it's important to be mindful of sugars in foods is because that increases our blood glucose levels, okay? When we eat carbohydrates, any carbohydrates, there is sugar in all carbohydrates, whether it's whole grain, fruit, veg, okay? What happens to our body then is our blood glucose increases. Our pancreas releases insulin to balance out that blood glucose and to take it out of our blood and put it into our cells in our body for our body to utilize that as energy. If we do not utilize all of that as energy, that gets stored as fat in our bodies, okay? So this is where people can gain weight, okay? If we're not utilizing all of the carbohydrate sugars that we're taking in, we're not burning them off through exercise, through working, through whatever it is, through sitting, through sleeping, we use calories and burn energy in that way as well. We store that excess energy as fat in our system, okay? So people are often confused and under the illusion that by eating healthy fats, they're going to get fat. Yes, of course, if all you eat is healthy fats and you do eat nothing else and you do no exercise, etc., you will gain weight. However, healthy fats are really good for you. I'm going to talk around those in a second. And they are not, in general, the reason why people gain weight. It is carbohydrates and highly refined carbohydrates in particular, okay? So whole grain. So I always say to people, in general, the darker you go in anything, the darker you go in fruit, veg, or whole grains, the more nutrition that is in it for you. More fiber, more protein, more phytonutrients, all the good things, micro, macro minerals, okay? Choose the lesser refined varieties of pasta, breads, rice, crackers, etc. What do I mean by that? Okay, again, darker in color. So if we're looking at rice, new favorite of mine is black rice. So you go black, you can go brown rice, you can go red rice, okay, wild rice. All of those are in the darker spectrum, right down then to your general white rice, okay? Same with your breads. If you look at rye bread, lots of fiber in rye bread, lots of protein. There's protein in there as well, okay? Legumes. What are legumes? Okay, so these are your chickpeas, your lentils, your beans, etc. You can buy them in a packet. You can boil them yourself and use make your own. Cook your own, I should say, or you can buy them in a tin pre-done, okay? You get lots of different varieties of these now. You can get the organic ones, which are just like 10, 12 cents more expensive than your regular ones. What does that mean if they're organic? Okay, it means that there's less chemicals being used in the production of these things, okay? So if we take soybeans as an example, soybean crops in the United States, there would be a huge amount of them, okay? So in particular, if you're buying anything soybean, I would say to you, if you're looking at the packet, soya milk, soya yogurt, soya beans, are they organic? Okay, anything that is mass produced, you know, there has to be a level of chemicals involved in the production of that. So just be mindful of that, okay? Healthy fats, lots of them. I'm going to talk you through this in a minute, okay? But like we're looking at your oils, your extra virgin olive oil, your sesame oil, your avocado oil, your rapeseed oil, your nuts and your seeds, okay? Seeds, I always tend to tell people go for milled chia and flax because it's easier for our digestive system to break those down. Basically, by having them milled, the first stage of digestion for them, like the little tiny seeds, already been broken down. So it's easier for our bodies to break down the rest of them, okay? And they don't get stuck in our small intestine. Okay, like any way of eating, avoid highly processed foods, okay? So it is fantastic, you know, if you've gone the vegan route and you're eating predominantly whole grains and lots of fruit and veg, etc. But there is, you know, like any industry, the food industry wants to make money. So, you know, there's a whole new industry out there now creating vegan foods in packets, okay? So just be mindful. I'm going to show you some examples in a minute. If you are buying pre-packeted vegan foods, whether they be like sausages, burgers, you know, your bars, look at the ingredients and see what's in them, okay? Do you recognize the ingredients? And if not, why not, okay? As I said there, labels can lie, the ingredients tell the truth. So this can be just something can be described as, you know, vegan, high protein, low sugar, but then you turn it around and, you know, it might have a minute amount of protein in it and, you know, 50 things deemed to be not sugar, but actually, in fact, they are sugar, okay? So just a tip for you, anything that ends in OSE, so like glucose, fructose, etc., is a sugar. There are over 257 sugars now, okay? And that rises daily, okay? So chemical versions of sugar just keeps increasing, and over 400 types of additives now, okay? So just be mindful. So when you're reading the ingredients in something, you're looking and you're going, I don't recognize this. That's quite likely you probably wouldn't because it might have only been developed a week ago, okay? As I'm talking, guys, by the way, if you have any questions, you can be feeding them into chat or take notes of some of this stuff. And if you feed them into chat, Michelle, then we'll just kind of do a roundup at the end and feed back the questions to me and I'll answer them for you. And equally, you're more than welcome to come on and ask questions as well. Okay, so food combining, what do I mean by that? And particularly when you're vegan and vegetarian, it's important that we look at getting proteins, carbs, and fats into every meal. It's important for everybody. But I think if you are vegan and vegetarian, the pure proteins, what do I mean by that? So something that has only got protein in it, so that tends to be meats. If you look at your beef, your chicken, your turkey, etc. In general, they just have 100% protein in them and nothing else, okay? Whereas when you're looking at vegan and vegetarian food, most of it has a combination of proteins and fats in it, proteins and carbohydrates, sorry, in it. So if we look at a tin of chickpeas, for example, you turn the back of the can of chickpeas, it will break it down for you into proteins and carbs and fats and everything else that's in it, okay? So there are proteins and carbohydrates in a tin of chickpeas, okay? Whereas if you look at a chicken breast, it's just going to be protein. You have to be mindful that when you're eating legumes, that you're not basically overdosing yourself on just carbohydrates and not getting enough proteins in as well. So for example, if you were to have a vegan curry and you were to put in chickpeas, lentils, beans, sweet potato, butternut squash, and loads of other veg. That's all really good stuff for you, but there's a lot of carbohydrates in there as well. So just to be mindful of that, okay? Again, why? Going back to the more carbohydrates we eat, the higher our blood glucose level goes, the more insulin we need to release, and potentially we're not burning off of all of that stored blood glucose when it further down the line gets changed into glycogen. If we're not exercising, etc., and we're not burning it off, what happens? It gets stored as fat, okay? So food combining, hummus is a really good example. Love it, okay? But if you look at the ingredients on this packet of hummus that I just had picked out, I think this is actually Tesco's organic version, okay? You've got chickpeas in there, you've got sunflower oil, you've got your tahini, which is just ground up sesame seed paste, there's lemon juice, garlic, and sea salt. Okay, so that's a really good product, lots of really good ingredients in there. But if you look at that, you've got proteins, carbs, and fats in there. So that's what I mean by food combining. So actually having that hummus alone, you're getting all of your macronutrients into you, proteins, carbs, and fats, okay? So here's a really good pyramid. So like if you look at the top, there's your fats, your leafy greens, your legumes, good examples of all of these things. your veg, okay, and your fruit. So that to me, that's health right there. Look at all those amazing colors, okay? The grain side of things, I would like those to be a little bit darker. So the pasta there looks very white. But if you were looking at, I'm going to show you an example in a minute of spelt pasta. If you've ever bought buckwheat pasta, which is gluten-free, they are darker in color. Again, darker in general will mean more fiber. And that's what I would say to people as well. When you're thinking about carbohydrates, think about what fiber is in this for me. When you're looking at your plate, you're thinking what nutrition is in this for me. So here's an example of a vegan plate. So you've got your fruit, you've got your veg, your legumes in there, your grains, and your nuts and your seeds. So over to the right of that picture, you'll see, well, what's missing? So things that vegans in general, when we have removed dairy, eggs, and meat from the equation, you potentially can be lacking in your omega-3s, your vitamin D, your iodine, and for certain sure you're not getting any B12 in, okay? So how can we get that into you? Omega-3s, you're looking at anything from the sea, okay? So seaweed is an example of something that potentially vegans might still be okay with eating. You will get some omega-3s in there, and your nuts and your seeds. So in particular, nuts and seeds that are high in omega-3s are flax, chia, and walnuts. Vitamin D from the good sun when we get it. Mushrooms are another great source of vitamin D. And iodine I mentioned, you'll get that from seaweed as well, actually. Okay, whole grain brown bread. So I'm going to run through some examples now of, you know, typical things that we might eat that are vegan, vegetarian, and just looking at the ingredients and why it's so important to look at the ingredients, just to draw your attention to maybe some nasties that can be in there, okay? So this is some whole grain brown bread as described in the front on the label, and you look at the ingredients because that's what we're all going to do now after this talk if we're not already doing it. And the first ingredient is flour. And it's described then as wheat flour. What does that mean? A good old white flour, okay? Very little fiber in it. So ideally, when you're buying some refined bread, which this is, meaning that it's been the wheat has been milled down and other things have been added in, you're looking for whole wheat flour, okay? Whole wheat is the whole grain, not wheat flour. That means it's been milled down. They get away with calling this whole grain is because they've added in other things into it to classify your nuts and your seeds, or in this case, I think it's seeds, to classify it as a whole grain. Protein bar. So this is an example of a vegan protein bar, okay? So if you look there, there's probably over 20 ingredients in that, okay? The big one, so the one at the ingredient that's most apparent in this is always going to be the first one. So it's pea protein here, okay? So that's good. Pea protein is good for me, okay? It's a vegetable, but look at all the other stuff as it goes down, right? Look at this. I mean, some of the words you can't even pronounce here, and rice syrup, etc., etc. What is most of that stuff? Most of that stuff is sugar, banana powder, etc., etc. Sugary things that are going to make it taste nicer for you to eat, basically. Here's an example of some vegan ice cream, okay? So obviously, ice cream in general comes from dairy, okay? This is Ben & Jerry's vegan version. So if you look at it, okay, coconut flavored ice cream with caramel, it's described as, which is caramel is 10%, cookies 7%, swirl and chocolatey peaches 7%, okay? So first ingredient in this is water. The second ingredient is sugar. No, ice cream to me, that's sugar. This is a sugary dessert. Glucose syrup, what's that? More sugar. Okay, raw cane sugar, more sugar. So it's basically frozen sugar. That's what it is, okay? Pea protein, another example, this is pure pea protein. So if you go into your health food store and you're looking for a vegan protein to either add to your soups or things like that, or this would be a little bit hard to palate just by drinking it by itself. So you could be adding a scoop of this to your curries or to your soups, etc. It's just what they have done in this example. If you look here at the breakdown of this stuff, so peas, I know, have got lots of good things in them. They've got protein, they've got carbs, they've got fiber. But in general, when they're making something just a protein, what they've done here is there's only 1% carbs in this and 0 fiber. So they've taken out all of the other nutrients to just leave the protein there, whereas it's got 20 grams of protein per quarter cup in this, okay? So it's 100% protein in this. So just be mindful when you're buying those things that you're recognizing it's not the standard peas like I have frozen. I'm not getting all the nutrition in there. I'm just getting the protein, okay? So I mentioned already some of these B12 may lack. Nutritional yeast, I'm going to give you an example of this in a second. The ingredients on some nutritional yeast and everything that's included in it. Really, really good. What is nutritional yeast? Okay, it's basically just a yeast. It's bacteria. Okay, what grows in bacteria in general, can be very good vitamins and minerals for us. Okay, if you've never had it before, what does it taste like? It's quite cheesy in taste. It's actually quite nice. If you want to just take it off the spoon, just in order to be getting B12 into you, you can add it onto things, into salads, for dressings and things like that, for that cheese taste. Protein, okay, you may be lacking in protein, but it is in everything that we eat. So just be mindful that when you are having, your vegan, your vegetarian sources of protein, there tends to be carbohydrates in there as well. So if you look at dairy on the vegetarian side, there will be carbohydrates in most of dairy as well, yogurts, etc. And in your vegan eating, you've got your legumes, etc. There will also be carbohydrates in there as well. Calcium, okay. Again, if you're vegan, you're not going to be eating any dairy. It's one of our main sources of calcium. But there is lots of calcium in tahini, which is your milled sesame, your green veg, fortified breads and cereals. So what tends to happen when anything is refined by the food industry, if you look at breads and cereals, the governing bodies then of the food industry say, so well, you've refined and you've milled this product, you now need to add back in what you've taken out. So that's why you will often see cereal packets saying fortified with vitamin D, B vitamins, etc., because they have refined that grain to a level that stuff has been killed off, basically, and they need to put it back in. Okay. Iron, if you're not eating a lot of red meat, for example, you can be lacking in iron, but you can get it in again through fortified cereals. Make sure when you are eating stuff that is high in iron, so spinach is an example of a vegetable, that you consume it with vitamin C and away from tannins. What are tannins? These are in our caffeinated drinks, tea, coffee, and also in red wine and white wine as well. Okay, vitamin D3, supplement in the winter months. Okay, so we store vitamin D, okay, 3, but we sometimes, particularly when we've live in a country like Ireland, where we mightn't necessarily be getting lots of sunny summer days, we may not have enough storage to keep us going through the winter. Okay, so if you're ever feeling tired, run down, low in mood, vitamin D, if you think about it, when you're out in the sunshine, you're feeling more positive. It increases all of the good hormones within us as well. So by taking a supplement in that regard, it can help with your mood as well. Take it in the morning. So vitamin D3, ideally in its natural state, is sunlight. We should be getting it in the morning, sunrise, sunlight. Okay, so it's good as well in relation to your circadian rhythm. That is the 24-hour clock that our body operates on, that we try and regulate that we're taking vitamin D as we would want it as a human. So we want sun during the day and not at night. Okay, so if you take your vitamin D supplement at night, you're telling your body it's daylight time, but it's not. So you need to be taking it in the morning. So be mindful of that. Okay, good tip. Omega-3s, as I said, get it from seaweed, walnuts, your flax, your hemp, your chia. If you don't eat any of those, you don't like any of those, then you can supplement. There are now vegan supplements of omega-3s, okay? Omega-3s, really important for your brain health, okay? Iodine, I've said seaweed, pink Himalayan salt, really good source as well. Zinc, okay, lots of zinc in red meat, lots of zinc in seafood. You're not going to be eating those. Look at tempeh, that's fermented soy. Okay, you'll get it in health stores, and some wheat germ as well. So here's your example now of your nutritional yeast flakes. Okay, so lots of B12 in there, lots of other things as well from the B groups and zinc as well. I'm not going to run through all of these now, but you can see there breakdown of everything that's in it. Look, sodium, calcium, vitamins, fantastic. So here I mentioned spelt pasta a little bit earlier. So spelt pasta, spelt is a grain. And in that, just to show you as well, so if you look at per 100 grams there, so you should always look at the ingredients per 100 grams and then break that down based on the portion that you're going to eat, okay? So look, there's 30.5 grams of carbohydrates there, 5.5 grams of protein. So even in that spelt, which is a grain, there is protein in there as well. Tahini, great source of all of these micronutrients here. Look at B6, magnesium, vitamin A, C, no C in it, sorry, iron, etc. Okay, calcium as well, really good source of calcium. Weetabix, if you like your cereal, Weetabix would be one of the better ones to choose in relation to less sugar. So we've got whole grain wheat here is 95%, barley extract, that's a sugar, and then regular sugar, okay? So probably regular sugar, if you work out the percent here, you're only talking about 2 to 3%. Okay, so this is a good chart just to show you sources of the different things, different food groups and macro and micronutrients that a vegan should be getting in and where you might get them from. So if we look at calcium as an example, broccoli, kale, hazelnuts, legumes, and arugula is the American word for rocket, okay? Iodine, your zinc, your selenium, which is really good for your immune system, your B12, so selenium, you can get that from your legumes as well, and your mushrooms, vitamin D, as we said, sunshine, mushrooms as well, okay? Protein-rich food, another great, I suppose, infographic there, different sources of protein-rich foods. We've mentioned soybeans, mange protein, peanut butter, broccoli's got protein in it too, okay? All of those things full of, not full of, but lots of protein in them as well, Brussels sprouts. So there's a chart. This is a really good one. Basically, it breaks it down for you per half cup or tablespoon size. So it's good to see. So if we look here, for example, beans, okay, half a cup of your lentils is 7 grams, whereas half a cup of your tofu has got 10 grams, so slightly higher, okay? And this is another great one as well, okay? So 1 cup, again, this is only showing you protein, but be mindful that there's also carbohydrates in all of these as well, even in your hemp seeds there. So flax seeds is the only seed that has got no carbohydrates in it. It's just pure protein, okay? I really like this one because it gives you, like, I suppose the per 100 gram, the amounts of protein in each of these plant-based foods, okay? So the good old potato is up there at the top as having only 2.5 gram per 100 gram. Look at the bottom, pumpkin seeds, way more. But if you think about it, the amount of pumpkin seeds in 100 grams is going to be way more than your potatoes. So you're going to be getting in still a good bit of protein by eating 100 grams, or your portion, I should say, of potato, because you're going to eat more than 100 grams of potato, whereas you're going to find it hard to eat 100 grams of pumpkin seeds in a sitting. 10 plant-based foods high in omega-3s, okay? So again, hemp, berries, walnuts, chia, all there. Iron, spinach I've mentioned, really good source. So high sources of plant-based iron. You've got your spinach right down to your broccoli is good as well. So still some broccoli in there too. Some iron in there too, I should say, sorry. Calcium, another great graph here. If you look at my favorite, tahini, so per tablespoon of tahini, and that's a lot, you probably wouldn't be eating a teaspoon in a portion for fat of tahini for you in your meal. There's 120 milligrams in that, compared to, like, if we look at your soybeans there, your cup of soybeans is 175 milligrams of calcium, okay? So, you know, tahini, I suppose, for the amount that you're going to eat, you will easily eat, you know, a good, you know, a tablespoon. It's quite possible that you could eat a tablespoon of that to get that into you for calcium purposes. So getting more plant-based into your diet, how are you going to do that? Well, I always say to people, look, irrespective of whether you are a vegan or vegetarian, you should be trying to add more legumes and more veg into your daily meals, okay? So add them into your soups, your salads, and your stir fries. Proteins, protein powders, really good as well on the pure side of things. So like that pea protein, pure pea protein, add it into your soups, into your breakfasts. Nuts and seeds, eat them daily. Again, breakfast, salads, stir fries. Toast off your seeds for your salads. Really tasty. It changes the flavor of them as well when they're toasted. Add fruits to your breakfast and veg to all meals. That's a big one for me. Make sure every plate that you're eating, every meal that you're eating, you're looking at half a plate of vegetables. You know, think about what veg are you having with every meal. Eat good quality vegan processed food. So if you're buying vegan sausages and burgers, look at the back of the pack. What exactly is in them? You know, just because it's described as being vegan or vegetarian does not necessarily mean the ingredients in that are the most amazing in the world, okay? So just a quick recap before I open it up for questions and answers. just remember, food is information for your body, right? It enables your body to function. So you can be eating, you know, highly refined vegan and vegetarian food, which may not, or regular, you know, food doesn't necessarily have to be vegan or vegetarian. It's highly refined. It's not great for your body. So at every time you're eating and every meal that you eat, think, what is this doing for my body and my brain? What information is this giving to my body to allow it to function? Eat to be well, to live well, and to prevent illness. That's how I view food. You know, obviously, it's, you know, we're humans in 2020, and there's always room for being flexible and, you know, having variety. But be mindful most of the time that what you're putting into your body allows you to live, basically. Think, what nutrition is in this for me at every meal? Eat the 3 macronutrients at every meal. So you're looking at getting protein, carbs, and fats into every meal that you eat. That includes breakfast, okay? People often struggle at breakfast time, going, how do I get protein in? Well, if you're a vegan or vegetarian, a good source would be some soy yogurt as an example at breakfast time. Plan, schedule, and prepare your own meals as often as possible. Really key. I think a lot of vegans and vegetarians actually are good at this one, because when you eat out, it tends to be less of a choice for a vegan and vegetarian. So you need to plan and prepare in advance. Choice will not be there for you, so therefore you plan. So if you can plan in advance, you know, you tend to choose better for yourself and prepare better for yourself. Your health is in your hands. So it really is up to each and every one of us. And I think through this whole experience of the pandemic and COVID, we have learned that, you know, we have to be more mindful about looking after our own health. That's it. I hope everybody enjoyed that. There is my contact details. If anyone would like some help one-on-one with me, please feel free to get in touch. My details are there. My website is eatfoodright.ie. All the contact information is on that as well. Thank you for your time.